a Trump's point of view, there are two things that we have to see how they unfold. One is that Trump has been very, very pro-Israel in his first presidency, and he did lots of things that were, to side with Israel, even at the cost of going against some of the established U.S. policies, especially against Iran when he revoked the Iran nuclear deal unilaterally. But the second important thing that we have to notice, Trump's aversion to wars. And even yesterday, in his victory speech, he said that I'm not here to start the wars, I'm here to end the wars.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I am Dr. Shubhda Chaudhary, and today is 7th of November, by the way. Yesterday was a political earthquake, or whatever you want to use it as a terminology. A new dawn of Donald Trump has finally begun, the second one. The 45th president of US is the 47th president of US again, after so many assassinations, and he's still alive there for the American people, celebrating in meritocracy and the American dream. So today we are going to talk about the impact of US elections on the war in Gaza. More than 43,000 Gazans have been killed, according to the official estimates. And for that, we have Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, who is there with us. He's a military veteran. He's a writer on global geopolitics and security, especially West Asia. You can read a lot. He keeps on writing every alternate day. There is something which is published in Hindu, Frontline, First Post. If you follow his Twitter handle, you'll get to know about everything that he writes. And he writes, proficiently about all of this. He's also the former director in military intelligence, which is very, very enticing because we don't know what it is. So he's also the former director in military intelligence, former director in MEA, and I hope that all of you should know MEA. I'm not going to get the full form of it. And he was the former RF at MP IDSA. So thank you for everyone for joining in. And sir, my first question to you is, which is, I will just hit the nail on its head. And one of the most, we don't know Trump 2.0. The beauty of Trump is that he's not predictable. So we don't know what the administration will be like. My first question is that Miriam Andelson gave 100 million to Trump, which was a gift from a prolific pro-Israel donor, which is the newest and largest amount of spending that Trump got, because his major vote base and the funders are Christian evangelicals in US. But Miriam Andelson's 100 million was even more than the 75 million that Elon Musk gave to Trump. So with so much of Israeli funding, how do you think that Trump's policy is going to change on Gaza?
So thank you, Dr. Shubda, for inviting me. It's an absolute privilege to be here with you and on your, podcast Middle East Insight. And I must say that in a very short span of few months, it has taken wings, and a lot of people are watching your podcast. A lot of people are talking about it. So good luck to you and more power to you as you move on to the future.
Thank you.
So now coming back to this, a very important question. Now that Trump has come and all the drama and suspense of the U.S. elections is over, so now it is, going to be down to the brass tacks and how it actually moves around. It still has about 2.5 months to go, because Trump will finally take office on 20th of January. So right now it is more of a transition, and how he lays out his plans once he is in office. Obviously, from what I understand, whenever there is going to be any major policy, national security decision, Trump would or may be invited by Biden for consultation or for information. But the final reins will be handed over only on 20th January. And as Trump takes over his presidency, one of the most important, foreign policy or security questions that he would have in mind is the wars. One is the war in Ukraine and Russia, and the other one is the raging war in Gaza, which is now completed what about 13 months today plus, and exactly 13 months. In fact, today is 7th November, so exactly 13 months, and it has really taken a toll on the entire region, on the people of Gaza, and it is making situation difficult. From a Trump's point of view, there are two things that we have to see how they unfold. One is that Trump has been very, very pro-Israel in his first presidency, and he did lots of things that were, to side with Israel, even at the cost of going against some of the established U.S. policy, especially against Iran when he revoked the Iran nuclear deal unilaterally. But the second important thing that we have to note is, Trump's aversion to wars. And even yesterday, in his victory speech, he said that I'm not here to start the wars; I'm here to end the wars. So now this will be a dichotomy, or what you call a dilemma, decision making, fine balancing, whatever you call it, when Trump takes over. That on one side he is bound by his vision or his philosophy or his oath to side by Israel in whatever they do, and second is he's not going to let wars continue endlessly. In fact, if you remember, even few months back during this war that is going on right now, he had said publicly that get on with it, finish it, get the victory, and don't keep killing civilians. So he's very clear in his mind as far as wars are concerned. So this is the most important thing that we have to see as he takes over presidency on 20th of January.
That's interesting. But one thing which is like, apart from the misogyny and everything, sexism that everyone is trying to predict that what exactly why Kamala Harris failed. Do you think that the lack of Kamala Harris's victory was because of the fact that she did not cater to the Arab American population in US, specifically in Michigan, and even the swing states, Pennsylvania, where, by the way, the attempted assassination of Trump took place?
So, Dr. Shubda, I won't go into the details and specifics of how the voting patterns took place and how the voting happened in US. That is for so many other people who are watching the US elections closely to talk about. But yes, what I would say that as far as the war in Gaza is concerned, the Biden administration, which is including Biden and Kamala Harris, were very, very ambiguous about what they wanted from the war. So on one side, they were, siding with Israel. They were saying that Israel had the right to defend itself. They were saying that the civilians who are getting killed, they are part of the entire gambit of war that is happening. Secretary of State Blinken was there in the region for almost 11 times. Last being on 23rd October, doing shuttle diplomacy, which did not fructify in any ceasefire or a peace deal, etc. So they had a very what you call ambiguous kind of a stand, and they were not very clear. And even in her what you call campaign trail, Kamala Harris was neither denouncing the war, nor was she clear on whether the war should end. So there was a there was lack of clarity, which Trump did not have. Trump, firstly, was not in office, so he had the absolute, advantage of having whatever stand he could state. And second was he had absolute clarity on what he was looking for.
Yeah. That was very interesting, because she had to address the kind of policy gap in the Biden administration, and that itself became an albatross around her neck. Correct. Because there was no conversation. There was no conversation at all. Second, no matter how much her husband, Douglas Emhoff, used to tweet against Israel, used to tweet against, all of these politics, she herself was not able to take a clear stand. And I agree with you that that was something which really, really was felt by the Arab Americans. who are taking the entire tutelage of it. Okay, see, we made Trump win, but I don't know if that's good. But the point is that now Trump's presidency, if you go back to 2016, it was a similar, it's a similar kind of deja vu, collective deja vu, where the same thing happened to Hillary. But Trump did a couple of things during his presidency. First, he shifted the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, like West Jerusalem. He called it as Jerusalem, making it the capital of Israel, because Israel does not have a capital as such. Second, he started the Abraham Accords, like peace negotiations of Israel with various countries in West Asia and Middle East. Um, what do you think? If he comes back to power, will he again, because of the business and entertainment mindset that he has, is he going to rework on the Abraham Accords and try to have some kind of peace negotiation between Saudi Arabia and Israel and other countries?
Yeah, so Dr. Shubda, very important points that you have made. So, I jotted down some of the things. Two things or few things happened in Trump's first presidency. The first was that Middle East was largely kept deliberately out of conflict. So whatever conflicts were going on, they were either ended, exited, or Trump ensured that America at least did not have an active participation in it. Most of the things were started during Obama's time, and Trump, in some way or the other, ended it, whether it was the active participation of US in Yemen or in Syria, etc. Another interesting thing is, which I ran down the chronology of Gaza conflicts right from 2008 onwards, and it was interesting to note that the first conflict operation class lead happened in November 2008 and 9. When the first Israeli offensive took place into Gaza after Hamas provoked it. You may recall that Hamas took over power in Gaza in 2007 after it won the election. Thereafter, 2006. Yeah. And thereafter, Hamas and Israel, they had, Operation Pillar of Defense in November 2012, then Protective Edge in July 2014, then Guardian of Walls in May, and thereafter you had Operation Guardian of Walls in May 2021. So for 7 years, from 2014 to 2021, there were skirmishes, there were rocket attacks, there were raids, etc. But there was no major, conflict between Israel and Gaza. And this period coincided majorly with Trump's presidency from 2017 to 2021. So he ensured that despite whatever frictions were there, Israel and Gaza did not have a major conflict in his presidency. Coming to what he did in West Asia, he took over presidency in January 2021 after Obama. And in May 2021, he invited President of Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas to the White House, giving a very clear signal that he wanted some kind of a resolution to this issue, and so early in his presidency, 4 or 5 months down the line, he had the president of the Palestinian Authority in his office, and thereafter, you mentioned that point about Jerusalem, December 2017, when he one day, just out of nothing, announced that Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel with immediate effect, and that he would move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was a very, very provocative step. And in his own speech, he said that there'll be a lot of dissent, there'll be a lot of discontentment, but this is what he felt and his team felt was one of the steps towards larger goal of peace between Palestine and Israel. Then you would recall there was a very famous, plan which Donald Trump had propagated, although it didn't fructify or didn't move forward in any kind of a thing, and that was, Trump's peace plan. Yep. In somewhere in 2018, when he wanted a peace plan to be worked out, in which he talked about drawing of the borders. He talked about Israel giving up smaller settlements. He said there'll be Egyptian authority which may be ensuring the security of Gaza, and there was a lot many threats in it, but nothing came out of it finally. And then there were two things that happened, which were, very, very in support of Israel, as far as Trump was concerned, which was a vindication of how Trump was pro-Israel. The first one was the revocation of the Iran nuclear deal in May 2018. And despite the United Nations P5+1 and the IAEA saying that Iran was fully compliant with all the provisions of the nuclear deal, and they were permitting inspections and all the provisions of the nuclear deal that were there signed in 2015. He said, no, this is the worst deal that had happened. And something same what Netanyahu had said in the UN General Assembly after the nuclear deal was signed in 2015, and he just unilaterally revoked it. He threatened sanctions on anybody who thereafter did trade and any kind of interaction with Iran. Yes, you may remember that India was one of the 8 countries which was given permission to peter out, taper off the trade till May 2019, and after which India also at that time complied with what US wanted.
You also mentioned about, you were in your answer, you were mentioning about the peace plan that Donald Trump had proposed, in which his protagonist was his son in law, Jared Kushner. The guy who is a real estate businessman. I can't use the word tycoon, but anyway, the point is that he basically wanted to create this entire map of the greater or a new Middle East, in which there's a lot of real estate development, and there is this entire, in the name of Abraham Accords, there are so many defense, real estate, business deals that he makes a lot of apartments, and everything is so developed. And that is like something which, UAE is doing in its other islands and everything else. What was a bit striking is that Jared Kushner has utterly no experience of politics.
Yes.
And he was given the entire role of creating or enacting the peace plan of Trump. It's going to happen again. Trump right now is going to choose loyalists who are, there for him, because the first year is going to be very critical for him, no matter how entertaining it is for us. But at the same time, do you think that the peace plan is actually functional? Because India also has a lot of stakes now. I2U2, IMEC, the Adani port in Haifa. The northern Israel, where Haifa port is, it's almost always under sirens. So how do you think that was Jared Kushner the right choice?
No, I mean, we have all seen how Jared Kushner was, and you rightly said that he had no experience in politics or leave alone international diplomacy, but he was tasked by Trump to get deal, get but it's only from the point of view of money, and that is why you see the two nations that were the target of his diplomacy was Saudi Arabia and UAE, where the maximum money was there. And before his Trump term ended in January 2021, just few months before it, he finally was able to get the Abraham Accord signed, in which UAE was one of the 4 nations which signed the Abraham Accords. So what I would say, in hindsight, looking at now, 4+4, 8 years of when Trump first came to power, that was not international diplomacy. From a classical point of view, that was more of a business which was superimposed, or international diplomacy which was superimposed on the major chunk of business interest, and which does not play out now, not in a conflict zone like Middle East, where there are very, very deep fault lines which are there.
Yes, and that is something. So, for example, from my recent visit in Saudi Arabia, one thing which I realized was that the state, for example, the government, obviously, it's very against extremism of any kind, be it Hamas, Hezbollah, any. But the people, when Sinwar was killed, every Friday in the mosque, in the madrasas, when people meet, there was a certain kind of anger which was developing in the population that, this is wrong. Sinwar, no matter how many Palestinians he himself has killed, he was a war hero. So, do you think that with so much of there might be a spillage of what is happening now, Gaza, Lebanon, all of that, West Bank, in the worst way, if I can say, is completely exterminated as of now, or in the process of being. From 1st of October, there has been no food supply to Gaza.
Yes.
At all. Today is 7th of November. All of us can calculate the number of dates. But do you think that this is going to the common man or woman's anger is going to spill in the other Middle Eastern countries, West Asian countries against their own governments if they do
No,
deals?
I think, Shubha, the region has seen the Arab Spring in 2010-11 when the people's anger had spilled on the streets and number of countries were adversely affected. I don't think it is going to repeat itself so soon, and conditions are not so oppressed for a common man, whether
Yeah.
it in Saudi Arabia or UAE or Kuwait or Oman, where they will turn their anger on their government. But I agree with you that there are two different strands in this region. One is the strand or the line that the governments have taken, especially Saudi Arabia and UAE, where they are very clear that their paths are totally focused and defined by what diversification they want, what economic progress they want, and their visions 2030 for Saudi Arabia and 2035, I think, for the UAE. So they don't want to get involved in any of the mess that is there in the region, and that is one of the primary reasons why you see right from 7th October 2023 till date, the two countries which have been absolutely clear in their stand as what I have been writing as ambivalent are Saudi Arabia and UAE. They condemn whenever something happens, some atrocity happens in Gaza. They condemned Israel's attack on Iran, saying that it is an attack on nation sovereignty, etc. But apart from that, they have done nothing. So
Yeah.
this is what the government stands there. But yes, people on the street, they have generations of familial relationships. People have been going across and forth, back and forth. Palestinians have been coming to the region and marrying into the families, etc. So people's sentiments will obviously will be there with the Palestinians who are there in Gaza, West Bank, or even with the people who are getting adversely affected, killed in Lebanon. But these two strands, I don't see getting into a conflict or clash where people take on their governments in Saudi Arabia, UAE, or anywhere else in the region.
Yeah, that is true in terms of standard of living, in terms of the kind of safety, protection, and the various kinds of opportunities, financial opportunities that Saudi Arabia and other countries are giving to their citizens is much more than the economic. Like, for example, if we say that economy won over democracy in US, that kind of, because of food inflation, the mortgage inflation,
Absolutely.
people were not able to have food on the table, the prices of houses, someone just imagine, like, if someone wants to take their kids out to McDonald's or something, Starbucks or whatever, it will cost them $100. That is the kind of inflation that the Americans were so disgruntled with. So they obviously didn't, majority of them didn't really care about what exactly is happening before, because they're not able to put food on the table.
Absolutely.
And which is very right in their own discourse. But do you think that, because yesterday Netanyahu talked with Donald Trump for 20 minutes, and one of our guests who has been there, a famous Israeli historian, Fania O. Salzberger, she tweeted yesterday that if President Trump manages to subdue the Iranian regime by tough policies and negotiate an Israeli Saudi peace that includes Israeli Palestinian territorial settlement, I'd say out loud that he is the most despicable man who ever pulled off a positive global change. At the same time, but he's still going to damage US democracy, destroy the separation of powers, cater to tyrants, kill the last vestiges of civil and truthful public discourse, and empower Israel's worst extremists. She herself is an Israeli historian. Over here, Ben Gavir and his ilk are already dancing out of joy. The Israeli cabinet and war cabinet, the politicians, they're like overwhelmed. They're very happy. Liberal Americans are welcome to look at Israeli civil society for inspiration on the model of ongoing resilience that is happening. For example, Israel itself is going through, because even before 7th of October, 2023, Israel itself is going through a lot of
political
unrest against Trump, against Netanyahu. Sorry, I'm confusing between them. It is going on.
Absolutely. And, I wrote yesterday in Frontline that the day when U.S. Was going to vote for its president on 6th of November or 5th of November,
5th of November.
On the sidelines, in the region, Netanyahu quietly dismissed his defense minister.
Yes.
So, and on the same evening, there were mass protests on the streets of Israel, where even people in uniform took part, saying that, this cannot be accepted. And if you recall, like you said, even before 7th October attack, in the month of March 2023, once again, Netanyahu had dismissed Gallant, the defense minister. Why? Because he was not inclined to side with Netanyahu on the judicial reforms that he was proposing. And there were huge public protests, unprecedented in Israel. And Netanyahu, within a week or so, had to take back his decision and reinstate Gallant as the defense minister.
Yep.
So there is a lot of internal turmoil in Israel. It is not all hunky-dory and celebration now that Trump has come to power. The hostages are still not back, and every day the families of the hostages are on the tenterhooks. And we have seen that over the past 5 months, the numbers of the hostages alive have been dwindling. Sometimes they have been killed. 3 have been killed in crossfire with Israel. Once we heard that 6 people were killed during one of the airstrikes by Israel. Some have died because they succumbed to their illness and injuries or whatever. So the numbers of hostages who are alive and that can be brought back to Israel is dwindling by the day.
Yep.
So when you take the holistic picture of Israel, suffering huge losses in southern Lebanon. They launched the ground offensive on 30th of September, and they've made no headway. Hezbollah, despite the entire political leadership taken out, their communication systems busted, their second, third tier of leadership taken out is, taking a heavy toll on Israel. There are so many tanks have been destroyed. Every day, Israeli defense forces themselves are coming out with official statement that 2 soldiers have been killed, 3 soldiers have been killed. You mentioned in your opening remarks the port city of Haifa is under constant target by Hezbollah. I think there was some report yesterday when Trump was being declared as the winner. There was some kind of a missile or rocket which landed in the vicinity of Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. Where it came from or what happened, nobody said anything about it in the euphoria of Trump getting elected. So it is not that Israel is going to get everything on a platter now. And as I said in my opening remarks, Trump is averse to wars. So even though he may have had a 20 minutes conversation with Netanyahu, amongst the first leaders whom he spoke to, and he has publicly supported Israel in all its endeavors, even during his first term, it is not very likely that he will let Israel carry on with this indefinite war endlessly.
Yes, I mean, like, he doesn't want wars. He doesn't want wars. So what he wants, we still do not know. I don't know if he knows. But yes, one thing which is different about Trump is whatever he says is what he does, or whatever he does is what he says. The lack of filter creates transparency. He's not dwindled down in bureaucracy, like we don't know what is happening, and then there's a different policy or there's no response. And that kind of, even the press conferences that US was doing, the White House was doing, they were completely ambiguous.
Absolutely. Every time, there was a press conference or a statement by the president or Secretary Blinken that they're going to stop Israel from any more attacks, whether it was in Rafah, whether it was in West Bank. Within 10 or 12 hours, you would get a news that some $8 billion more have been sanctioned in military aid, some $6 billion more have been. So, they were playing absolutely to the gallery and doing whatever they wanted. this thing would not happen with Trump. He is very clear in what he says and what he does. So this is something positive that we can take, that whatever will be the policy, whatever is announced will be done.
Yeah, whatever he says is what is in his mind, and that is something which is very rare for a president. Something commendable, yes, something commendable also. Like, it's very rare to see. I'll give him credit for that. Gaurang, one of our volunteers, is asking a question, and I'll rephrase it. For example, Kamala Harris's vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, was involved in the nuclear negotiations between US and Iran. Now, supposedly there is this entire propaganda machinery that Iran is somehow involved in assassinating Trump. We don't know how true it is.
I missed the last part.
Yeah, like there is this entire propaganda which is going on that Iranians were behind the failed assassination attempt at Trump. We don't know how true it is. It is propaganda on which side by the deeper state of which country, we don't know. Do you think that Trump is going to try to mend his vocal critique against Iran that he has been doing?
So, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to say, because Trump is two things. One is very unpredictable, and secondly, his hate for Iran is more than anything else that he has for the region. But what he would have the benefit is of the hindsight, that 4 years of his presidency, when he imposed huge sanctions, and we remember Mike Pompeo saying the maximum pressure regime on Iran, maximum possible sanction, and those sanctions haven't been lifted because Biden did not get anything from the Iran nuclear talk. So sanctions haven't been lifted in any form in the last 8 years, but Iran is still on the march. Now, IA report says that they had traces of 84% enrichment of uranium. Yes, I understand that when enrichment takes place, some particles will get more enriched and some stray, but officially Iran is enriching uranium up to 60%. And once, if somebody understands the process of uranium enrichment, once it crosses 20% enrichment, thereafter, whether it is 60, 80 or 90, the process is very, fast and very easy, because the major impurities have already been removed once it is made 20% pure. So Trump would have realized that the maximum pressure regime has not worked. All kinds of appeals and all kinds of talks on Iran nuclear deal have not happened. And most importantly, the Gaza war has shown two things. One is that Iran is no longer going to exercise strategic patience. So if something happens, Iran will or may strike back. And secondly, Iran's military capability, especially in terms of its missile capability, is quite potent, and it is able to penetrate the best of the air and missile defenses, whether it is Israel or US. So when he considers the whole picture, I don't see Trump going after Iran the way he did in his first term, and there will be, or there would be, I think, some change of tack as far as US policy on Iran is concerned. And we all know that Iran's current president Pezeshkian is also inclined towards having a reconciliation with the West. He said it in his first speech when he got elected. He said it in his address to the world, which he broadcast a few days after he got elected. So if you add everything together, there is hope for some positive trajectory, but all depends on how this Gaza war is able to end and how soon can it end.
Yes, that is, everything is linked to it. Every kind of escalation, de-escalation, and all of that is going on is linked to that. And I agree with you that the Pezeshkian and everyone, they are because he himself was also involved in the nuclear deal negotiations.
Yes.
So it is something, no matter how much frantically we keep on expecting that, Israel is going to attack the Iranian nuclear facility. They do not have the bunker busting Tora Bora kind of bombs. US has not given it to them. They cannot attack the Iranian nuclear sites, which are way underground in the mountains. In Isfahan.
If I can just say, it is not only the capability, it is the even the possibility of what we want to achieve militarily, which has been shown twice. Once it has been shown in Afghanistan, where U.S. literally bombed Afghanistan out of sheer, as Bush said, we will bomb it to the Stone Age. And now in Gaza Strip, where various estimates are there from military experts saying 80,000 TNT have been 80,000 tons of TNT has been pumped into Gaza. It's a small strip of 5 kilometers by 41 kilometers, but still Gaza Strip exists today. Still people are there. Still they are surviving. Still Hamas is firing rockets into Israel, although they may be stray ones. Still the IDF is there in northern Gaza. And yesterday only they given a statement that officially, which was being suspected all along, that people will no longer be allowed to return to northern Gaza. That means northern Gaza is already been taken over, and whether it will be left to ruins or whether it will be under directly military control of Israel, that is something which time will tell. But they have made it clear that if they have their way, Gazans are not going to go back to North Gaza. The point that I want to make in this is that you cannot subjugate a regime or a nation just by standoff military weapon platforms, whether it is airstrikes or whether it is missiles. And if you could not do it to Gaza, including ground troops which have been there for so many months, how can you do it to a nation like Iran, which is 13 times larger than Israel? Huge geographical area, huge terrain, and like you rightly said, the nuclear sites are so beautifully located deep underground in deflated locations within the mountains that it is not militarily possible to get a direct hit onto those nuclear sites.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something which is like a complete media frenzy, and I don't understand why. It is clickbait articles and videos, but they don't have any kind of sanctity of truth. I mean, like that is there. Our next question is by a member, Anurag Kant. He's asking that how would a Trump presidency impact India's policy in the Middle East? Especially with
India's
countries like
policy.
Iran.
Yeah, so I just wrote, which was published in the Hindu paper about a few days back, how I see India-Iran trajectory going forward, despite whatever is happening in the Middle East, because I feel that these two countries are too big and too important as civilizational partners and strategic partners in the region, that their relationship can be allowed to stagnate for many more years to come. And this much I know very clearly, that what India did in May 2019 under US pressure of stopping oil imports completely from Iran is not going to happen in future if and when India decides to commence oil imports or any kind of a relationship with Iran. And I think it was in Sydney or Brisbane or somewhere where even Dr. Jaishankar was asked this question, and he said, outside, but he does not foresee any of such steps under pressure being taken by India in the future. So India and Iran will move on its own trajectory. I don't think these kind of pressures are going to work. And the Russia-Ukraine war has already clearly established how India is very clear in exercising its strategic autonomy. They withstood all kinds of pressure that were put by the Biden administration and Europe, and they still continue to trust and trade with Russia. So I don't see why once India and Iran decide to move ahead on this stagnated partnership, how it will be stopped by whatever it is done.
Yeah, and one thing which I am quite surprised by in most of the Middle Eastern countries at the airports, you will see signs in Arabic, you will see signs in English, you'll see signs in Chinese. So my next question is, which is from Kaun's previous question, is that we have investments in the Chabahar port. But Iranian and Chinese, they have a much more closer bond. Chinese and Saudi Arabia, Chinese and UAE, they have much more closer bond, much better labor contracts, much better, even China and Israel, for example. So do you think that there is a certain kind of switch that is needed in our foreign policy, taking into consideration the vulnerability of the region at this moment?
I think, Dr. Shubha, our policy in West Asia has been very productive and very successful. And whether China is having a strategic partnership of 25 years with Iran, or whether they are moving forward with Saudi Arabia, it is not a zero sum game that something is coming at the cost of what India is trying to do in West Asia. So India has been pretty successful in the last, especially 10 years in West Asia. In the overall of the last decade, if we see, West Asia will definitely, without doubt, emerge as the winner, as a region where India has, succeeded. And it has not come at the cost of West Asian ties with somebody else when they want to, relate with India, or India having to give up something to have a better strategic partnership with so many countries in West Asia. And one very big factor, if you see, last about, I would say, since 2008, after the Mumbai attack, which is there, the two things that have happened, which have, hugely affected India's relations with West Asia in the positive manner. One is that West Asia countries have all accepted and understood India's fight against terror.
Yeah.
And thereafter, if you see, whether it was Uri or Pathankot or Balaport or any other thing, almost unanimously you have had statements coming out promptly from all West Asian countries whenever India has been inflicted with terror, which was not the case earlier, because we've been shouting hoarse over the rooftop for so many decades and nobody was listening to us. The second factor which has helped India in its relation with West Asia is West Asian countries dehyphenating their ties with Pakistan versus India.
Yes.
So it is not coming now at the cost that we have got to show Muslim solidarity to Pakistan, and so we have to go slow on India. No. So these are the two things that I think have made a huge difference to India's success in its partnership going strong with respective West Asian countries and the region as a whole.
Yeah. For the scholars of international relations, I would like to just simplify it. I asked a question of realism to serve, of real politics, which was a zero sum game that, one side can win only when the other side loses. His answer was liberalism or neoliberalism, where the economy or the economic connections are much more important, where politics is not a zero sum game. Right. Gaurang sir is asking the next question, that attempted Israeli embassy bombing in Delhi. Should India prepare for such events? How is our security at stake for the same?
I mean, these are, I would say, straight incidents, and they are aimed to basically, put fear in the mind of the security establishment, as also to try and put a spoke in the ties between the two countries, whichever are affected in wherever.
Yeah.
Takes place. And a bomb threat on Israeli embassy in Delhi is not a stray incident. You have cases of foreign embassy being targeted all over the world, whether it was Denmark, recently it was in Germany, elsewhere. So this is a thing which keeps happening. And the host nation always has the responsibility to ensure the security of the foreign embassy. And Israel and India, especially, they collaborate very closely on intelligence sharing, whether it is on Indian soil, whether it is in West Asia or elsewhere. And so I don't think it is a very big major issue that should be of concern. We have to be alert. We should not be complacent on any intelligence issue like what happened on 7th October 2023 with Israel. Intelligence is a very routine kind of a thing. It sets fatigue because you keep seeing the same kind of inputs day after day, but a good intelligence setup will not never let complacency come and keep looking at that pin in the haystack wherever.
Yeah. This is actually true, because it's not for the first time that there has been an attack. And these attacks are symbols or political messaging. These do not cause any deaths. These are for domestic consumption.
Correct.
And they don't have any value as such. But they are working against their own favor by having such kind of little or superficial attacks just to send a political message, which works or helps no one's cause. In fact, it creates much more of phobia. So that is something which is there. And with this, sir, I would like to really thank you for the privilege of your time. And one thing which I want to really tell all my listeners and all my scholars is that Sir has been more than, even before I started Middle East Insights, he has been one of the first professionals of that cadre who supported me to start it. And he also guided me in ways in which I could have never fathomed to create a platform. So more than just, just a guest at today's podcast, he has been a very good guide, mentor, and friend to me. And this is very, very rare. The kind of work I would request all of you to follow him, search for him on Twitter, follow him, because he keeps on writing every alternate day. And he does a massive amount of research. And if you'll read his work, you'll understand. Because of the internet connectivity, we were not able to gather all the there was lag. But if you read his articles, anytime anything happens, immediately he has an insight into it, which is very neutral. And neutrality is something which is very rare in today's fragmented world. So I'm very, very thankful to you, sir, for the privilege of your time, even before this platform was born, and being a guide, a mentor, and a friend in very difficult times.
Yeah.
And that
Thank
is.
you, Dr. Shukla. I mean, I see in you a very, very talented person, a thorough professional, and it's been a great interaction with you, all this while. And like I said in my opening remarks, the Middle East Insights has made huge inroads in a very, very short span of time that you have launched. And I wish you more power and more luck. And I know without doubt, I don't have to wish you, but I know that Middle East Insight will become a major platform for discussion on the West Asian region, which is so close to Indian hearts and so strategically important to Indian policymakers.